Good morning, everybody. Welcome to City Hall, welcome to Council Chambers, and welcome to a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council for today, Wednesday, January 28th, 2004. The City Council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. Meetings are open to the public, and we do invite you to join us. For members of the public unable to attend council meetings, we can be viewed live on your cable station, Channel 35. We can also be viewed live via webcast from the city's homepage or heard via council phone. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Cardenas, Garcetti, Gruel, Han, Labange, Ludlow, Miskowski, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Smith, Villaraigosa, Weisstein, Padilla. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. The council is officially in session. And colleagues, before beginning with the matters appearing on today's agenda, I'd like to call on Councilmember Parks for a presentation.
Hold off 1 second. We got material coming.
Okay. Mr. Labange.
How about the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay.
Okay.
Would you like to lead us?
Sure. I'd like to ask everybody please rise in the great council chambers of the city of Los Angeles. Place your hand over your heart. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, first order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Weiss moves. Mr. Villaraigosa seconds.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Ludlow moves and Ms. Gruel seconds.
Mr. President, this is now the time for comments from the public on items not on council's agenda.
And I do not have requests from members of the public to address the council under general public comment. Public comment for today's meeting is closed. Next item, please.
There are 2 items on the agenda that have been requested to be continued. Item number 8, a request from Councilmember Zine to continue that matter for 1 week, which would be February 4th.
Okay. Any objection? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Also on item number 64, it's a closed session item. The city attorney is requesting a continuance to February 4th.
Also without objection. Next item.
On the regular agenda, items noticed for public hearing, items 1 and 2 are public convenience or necessities in Council District 11. A motion is required. The recommendation on number 1 is to grant the application, and number 2 is to deny without prejudice.
Okay. Do we have a motion on this item? Ms. Miskowski.
The motion on number 2 will be to deny the application without prejudice until the conditional use process has been achieved.
Okay. Colleagues, we have motions on items 1 and 2. I do not have requests from members of the public to address the council on these matters. Public hearings are open. Public hearings are closed for items 1 and 2. And since we have motions on the table, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those motions are approved. Next item, please.
Items 3 through 23 are items for which public hearings have been held. Item number 23, report has been submitted and distributed to the council members. Items 3 and 4 are commissioners. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Okay, let's hold items 3 and 4 on the desk temporarily. On the balance of the items, colleagues, 5 through 23, these have had public hearings. A motion from the floor would be required to reopen the public hearings. Seeing no such motion, do we have any requests for specials? Mr. Parks? Number 9, call special by Mr. Parks. And we do have a request to take that matter out of order. We'll take that after considering the commission appointments. Ms. Miskowski.
15 and 16.
15 and 16, call special by Ms. Miskowski. Any other requests for specials? Mr. Zine?
I'd like 13, please.
13, call special by Mr. Zine. Any other specials? We have 3 and 4 call special. Those are commission appointments. Item 8 has been continued. Item 9, 13, 15, and 16 are called special. On the balance of the items, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those matters are approved. Next items, please.
22 forthwith, please.
Forthwith on 22.
Items 24 through 62 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Without objection, these matters are before us. Items 24 through 62, public hearings have not been held, but I do not have requests from members of the public to address the council on these items. Public hearings are open. Public hearings are closed. Mr. Weiss, Ms. Perry, and Mr. Labange.
I'm going to move to receive and file 61.
Okay. We will entertain a motion to receive and file as we consider item 61. Ms. Perry?
46 special and 49 should be continued for 2 weeks.
Okay, 46 called special by Ms. Perry. We have a motion to continue 49 for 2 weeks without objection, so ordered. Mr. Labange. 44 called special by Mr. Labange. Any other requests for specials, colleagues? Items 24 through 62.
Mr. President, on item number 57, if council adopts that motion, the ordinance will be presented to council on Friday. It will be on a continuation page.
Okay, with that understanding, Madam Clerk, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those matters are approved. Next item, please.
Next,
Forthwith on item 38.
the next item is item number 63 is a closed session item. Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
Let's hold all closed session matters on the desk.
Then going back to the items called special, items 3 and 4 are confirmations of city officials to the Industrial Development Authority, and that would be confirmation of the council president's appointments. The committee report recommends approval.
Before we call Mr. Nungri and Mr. Robertson to the table, let me ask Mr. Parks if we're ready for that presentation. Not yet? Okay. Then, gentlemen, please come forward at this time. Colleagues, these are appointment considerations to the Industrial Development Authority. Public hearings have been held. Do we have members wishing to be heard on these appointments? If not, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Thank you both for your service to the city.
Thank you.
We expect great things from you.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Forthwith, please, on items 3 and 4. And we have had a request to take item 9 next. Mr. Parks, you call this matter special.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just, in fact, I think this is held over because I voted against it last week, but I'm just concerned that of several issues. Number one, recently the recent polling for the California Bond Fund shows only about 30% of the public is supportive of the current $15 billion bond fund. I would certainly make a motion today to see if we could get support to hold this over at least until the March 2nd election so that we can determine just what impact the passage or the non-passage of that bond fund will affect the city's finances. This city, I believe, would be irresponsible to go forward to add $40+ million in liability to the city's budget, knowing that we are currently $50 million over for this year and approximately $200 to $300 million over for the 04-05. Just yesterday, it was reported that the police department will stop hiring. With the 2 pay raises that we have authorized for the police department and the fire department, we could hire over 400 officers in either department, or we could stop the layoffs of those officers in those departments. We have a situation here where we could either stop what we saw happen in Sacramento by adding long-term liability to a budget that cannot absorb it, or we can continue on the process to be in a worse situation as we look forward in the next week or so that the city CAO will be coming forward to us with a like amount of budget cuts, about $50 million to balance this year's budget. And as we go out and confront our residents and our communities to tell them that tree trimming, street repair, sidewalks will not be done. And at the same time, we're asking personnel department to come forward to start the list for seniority that may cause layoffs. So at the same time that we're going forward on this issue today, there's a good likelihood that we could be back very shortly in the next week talking about more cuts, and then shortly after that, layoffs within the city family, including police and fire. So I would ask that, number one, that we hold this till March 2nd to see what the election shows us, because if the election does not pass the bond fund or the bond issue, which again is an uphill battle, we have the likelihood of going back to the $28 billion deficit in the state. So I'd ask that we reconsider this on after the March 2nd, so that we will know exactly what financial conditions the city is in, and that we not add liability to the city and really undo all of the good budget work that was done in the last year by this body.
Is there a second to that motion to continue?
Okay, hearing no second, I'd like to recognize President Padilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look good up there. Colleagues, I wanted to rise and voice my support for item number 9, which is the second reading on this ordinance to ratify the MOU between the city and the United Firefighters of Los Angeles City and related matters. Colleagues, I think there's been maybe a little bit of confusion as to what we're doing here and why we're doing it. Number one, I support this MOU because the firefighters deserve it. Number two, I support this MOU because it is fair and the right thing to do. And for those people who are concerned about can we afford this MOU, let me make something very, very clear. We are not sending mixed messages when we say we're going to move forward with this MOU with the firefighters while we're asking other employee groups, including the firefighters, to come back to the table and be a partner with the city in addressing our budget challenges. So let me not sugarcoat. We do have legal and liability considerations with not moving forward with this MOU. This didn't just come about in the last 30 days. We've been talking with the firefighters, negotiating with the firefighters for a long time. To go backwards on what we have put on the table and negotiated in good faith does open up our liability. It could make us liable for regressive bargaining among other things. So I believe we have to go forward. But let's make one thing very, very clear, and the firefighters understand this too. Before the ink is dry in this contract, we're going to be back at the table. Whether we technically are reopening the MOU or engaging in discussions to possibly amend this MOU, yes, there is that commitment on their part, on our part, as there is with several other unions, to be partners in the city on balancing our budget and addressing our fiscal concerns in the future. That is very clear. And so if there was any confusion, I wanted to stand today to clarify that. We must go forward with item number 9 today, but yes, we are working together. We're not sending mixed signals to the firefighters or anybody else on the status of the other MOUs. We have a serious budget situation to address. And on the question of the balance of the MOUs, we're also sending the signal that, you know what, we cannot probably move forward with any others until our budget situation is addressed. So I would ask you for your support and vote on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to have several other members recognized to continue this debate, but before I would like to recognize Councilman Reyes for an introduction in City Hall chambers.
Thank you, Madam President. Just I'd like to welcome the All Saints Church Youth Group. They're based out of Highland Park. Please stand. Welcome to City Hall. I first want to thank you for taking the trip and taking some time out of school to join us. I hope you take this opportunity to bring your parents and your neighbors to their City Hall. These are their tax dollars at work, so welcome and take advantage of the resources before you. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you and welcome. We're glad you're here. I'd like to now recognize Councilman Zine. You're next on the list. Councilman Zine.
Thank you, Ms. Han. On this item, it's close and dear to all of our hearts, the ones who provide the safety. I know Councilmember Labange, it's close to your heart, and the firefighters. This is for the firefighters, paramedics, the ones who are delivering the service. This is for the first responders. This is a contract that's 7 months behind schedule. The police officers in the city have received theirs. Other municipal employees receive theirs. In fact, the city council, the members of the city council receive theirs. But The firefighters have not received theirs. The paramedics have not received theirs. We're talking a 2% this year, a 3% the following year, and concluding with a 4%, with a reopener in that particular contract. I think it would be dishonorable to our firefighters, our first responders, to deprive them of this 2% this year with the assurance of the reopener. They have not come down to this council chamber and protested. They've continued to provide the safety to the people of Los Angeles, continuing to provide the safety through the fire season that we saw. We didn't have one parcel of land in the city of Los Angeles touched by the infernos that took place in this region. And those dedicated firefighters, paramedics, deserve this. And somehow, I find it troubling that we find appropriations for other departments and the first responders in this era of terrorism. We can't find the 2% to provide for them, which was in the contract that they agreed to, which was appropriated in this particular budget. And yes, we have some difficulties with the budget. Many of us were up in Sacramento yesterday dealing with that, and that will come to pass. But how do we, in good conscience, tell our first responders to go out and protect us and our families, to respond to those calls, to weather the storms, whether it be the snowstorm down in South Los Angeles or the fires in the San Fernando Valley, and not give them this 2% with the continuing contract if improvement does take place in economics, a following 3 and a 4. So I strongly support this and hope that all of my colleagues will support this for the heroic firefighters, paramedics that we have. Again, this is for the workers, not for the administration. These are the firefighters that serve all of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zine and Mr. Padilla. There's an opener, Councilman Parks. There's an opener in this contract that says if there's a challenge in the future, we could open it again. And I think there's been a little bit of a challenge for us to try to get this done on a timely fashion. I'm frustrated sometimes how long it takes to get labor relations solved in some areas, but I think we do a good job and a fair job, but it takes time. I wanted to stand for every firefighter from Station 105 in the West Hills of the San Fernando Valley to 101 in San Pedro, and 56 is in between, in every fire station where there's a paramedic, firefighter who answers the call 24 hours a day. It's a very focused job when that bell rings. Man, they're out the door and they're in the community, they're serving, they don't know what they're getting into, and they don't know what they got into today that may affect them in 5 or 10 or 15 years. Captain Peterson out at 28, unfortunately passed with a heart attack last summer, and Tony DiDomenico, who was a member of the fire service for many years, died, I believe, at an early age at 71, just recently on this account. Firefighters are our first responders, as Councilman Zine spoke of. We do have a reopener, which I want to thank all the people who were involved from the CAO's office for the negotiations, and thank you, FLAC, for coming to that agreement, because that's everybody working together. Because yes, we must maybe in the future months call everybody back to the table and put everything back on the table, but today is the day that we resolve the issue as it relates to the over 3,000 members of the Los Angeles City Fire Department who represent our efforts, the city councils, into serving the people in a public safety call. I thank you, and I ask for an aye vote.
Ms. Mizikowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. As both the chair of the Public Safety Committee and a member of the Budget Committee, I realize the balance we need. We want and have said public safety is our first priority, and yet we've got to be managing that bottom line and managing the budget. I think within the context of those two statements, we should approve this contract. We planned on approving this contract. We have approved it for our other public safety members, and in fact all other city employees as negotiated. If we don't approve this one, we actually handicap the firefighters, who are the most important element in our first response and in our overall public safety program. So I don't think we can put them in that second-tier position. And in fact, they have moved to the first tier by this opener, as has been indicated, which is an automatic trigger that the city singularly gets to initiate if we choose, if we think it's necessary. What we have to do, and what Mr. Parks is right to point out, is that come March, and if that bond doesn't pass and the state reacts in the ways that we've seen them acting in the past, we will be in that economic disaster description, and that is the finding that we have to make, to say we have to get back to the table and the firefighters have to be there. I think they will be. Members, it was interesting as this debate was going on. One, we heard about it yesterday in Sacramento, but as we clarified to the people what we were doing and how we were doing it, they all said, oh, is that it? That makes sense. We told them about the reopener and they were impressed. They don't have that with state employees. We told them about other things that we've gotten out of our union contracts, including higher health contributions and the like, and they were impressed. So there is a bigger story, and we have to acknowledge those elements rather than some of the ones that just make the headlines. Last week, in the middle of our debate of having the first reading and the second reading, members, there was a brush fire. There was a brush fire that flared up in the Pacific Palisades on one of those very, very high windy days. The firefighters were amazing in getting there. It got within 50 feet of structures, and if it hit the first structure, it was going to go into a whole lot more. And we know how critical that literal first response, that moment, those moments of first response were out there. Because it was in a heavy populated area, a lot of people were able to come out, see the firefighters, see their combined efforts, see the fire drop, which someone said the fire drop from the helicopter was the most beautiful thing they had seen, as it saved that particular home. And the final comment that I heard over the radio was a resident in that area saying, I don't know how much we're paying the firefighters, but it isn't enough. And again, that was an emotional response. It was an emotional response to that house being saved, to those lives being saved, to the fire being managed, because as we know, if you don't manage it in the beginning, those brush fires have a way of taking over and taking then days to manage or contain. In that context, in the protections that we've provided, in the raising the firefighters to the level that we've raised everyone else and treating them with that degree of equity, this makes sense, and I believe we should move forward.
Mr. Villaraigosa.
Mr. President, members, I think it's very important for us to respect a deal. Our negotiators negotiated an MOU with our firefighters. We did so in good faith. The firefighters did as well. And so I believe it's incumbent upon us, as part of that city family, to endorse that deal. And so I stand here in support of the motion to approve this MOU. I do want to, however, thank Councilmember Parks. Councilmember Parks, for the last couple of months as chair of this committee, has been singing the same song. And it's a song that all of us need to memorize. It's a song that we spoke of yesterday, or tried to sing anyway, when we went to Sacramento. This city is in financial crisis. And because of that, we may, after March, have to reopen this deal and look to the entire city family to try to work and resolve this budget deficit that we face. So while I do support this motion to approve the MOU, I also believe we need to take heed of what Mr. Parks has said time and again, and that is that there's not an unlimited amount of money here, that we're going to have to work together to keep our deal and our promises and commitments, but also as a family to work together to go through this crisis.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for those words, Mr. Villaraigosa. I too wanted to thank Mr. Parks for his leadership and really making sure that we continue being the best fiscally managed big city in America. Wall Street in this past 2 years has said just that our discipline, the leadership in our Budget and Finance Committee, the entire membership of the Budget and Finance Committee, the City Council, and our mayor, working closely with our city controller, we've been able to impose that sort of fiscal discipline here that has allowed us in difficult budget times, and 12 of us were up in Sacramento hat in hand yesterday, asking the state not to raid the city coffers just because we have done such a good job, but that has been a result of the hard work and discipline here. And I want to thank our bargaining units, too, for recognizing what a difficult situation we are in, and they have really stepped up to the plate. And if we are here today talking about huge concessions or even what the firefighters had asked for initially, we might give pause to what we are approving. But they stepped up recognizing and sacrificing this year because they know that they have to do their part, just as each and every one of us has to do our part to make sure that we balance the budget this year. Good faith, colleagues, is good faith. We're only as good as our word. And if we negotiate in good faith, we must execute in good faith. We have protections for our budget. We have protection for our citizens. But as Governor Schwarzenegger spoke so movingly in his State of the State speech about the heroism of firefighters throughout this state, all of us from local government and, need I dare say, our state government must recognize just how important those local services are, how important our firefighters are in saving lives every single day. And this is giving a basic just contract moving forward, one that allows us to protect ourselves should there be a financial emergency, which we are on the brink of because of the state situation, and one that we can look back on, I think, proudly and hold our head high that we delivered in good faith that which we negotiated. So I rise in support. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I want to say that Mr. Zine, I think, really summarized the entire case so well. These are people that whenever there's a citizen in need of help in this city, historically, over time and time again, they dial 911, a bell goes out in a fire station somewhere in this city, and these people in our LA City Fire Department respond honorably, fast, and efficiently to take care of the needs of our citizens. They do a great deal of pride, and I'm very proud to offer my support. This contract, as Mr. Zine said, does what we need to do to protect the city. And I know Mr. Parks has a real concern about our budget, and he's right. We do have to be concerned about that. But we did plan for this raise in this year's budget, and these are very honorable people. And they came to the table and they said to us, we understand the city of LA has some problems. We're willing to work with you and come up with an honorable contract that we think is fair to our people, at the same time realizes that the city of LA will face some problems. And if you do face those problems, that we will allow you to come back to the table and we will talk again. I want to commend Mr. McCosker and the leadership of UFLAC for dealing with us in a very honorable way. And I think for us to do anything less would be dishonorable, not just to your board, but to every firefighter that wears the badge of the LA City Fire Department. And so I'm glad to offer my support. I think it is our duty now to treat you with the same respect you've treated us. And thank you very much for that leadership, Mr. McCosker. And to the firefighters of this city, we're proud of what you do. We owe you this. We owe you a great deal more. And I just hope to God that I'll be here in a few years when we have another contract and times are better, and we can do you a better job of treating you the way that you truly deserve to be treated. But in this contract, you've done the right thing for your membership. I think the council is going to do the right thing for the city and for your membership, too. And thank you very much. I support you.
Ms. Hahn.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, I too rise in complete support of this decision that I hope we are making today by agreeing to this contract. And everyone has said it so well today, but it's clear that when we went up to Sacramento yesterday, which, by the way, I was very proud of us. I was very proud of us to have the mayor and 12 city council members walking the halls of the Capitol in Sacramento with a unified voice about what really means the most to us in Los Angeles and what kind of cuts would clearly hurt this city's ability to deliver basic services. And in times like this, colleagues, and I know we're going to have these debates, in tough fiscal times, we're going to have to decide what we are in the business of doing. We have to remember what a city is in the business of doing, what we really are obligated to provide to our residents. And in times like this, we may have to cut back on things that, frankly, we just can't be in the business of doing anymore. But the first and foremost thing that we're in the business of doing is providing public safety to the residents of Los Angeles and those that come into our city for various reasons. And it is our priority now to fund adequately and to give these fair, reasonable raises to the members of our public safety community. And colleagues, I have been encouraged because this new network of neighborhood councils, which are growing in every neighborhood in Los Angeles, the mayor is going to neighborhood councils in this tough budget year and saying, we have a limited amount of resources. Maybe you should help us decide how we spend these dollars. What's important to you at the neighborhood level? Why don't you tell us? Why don't you help us make these decisions on how we spend our scarce dollars? And pretty much across the board, neighborhood councils from every neighborhood in this city have said, we want this city to be safe. We support our police officers, our firefighters, our paramedics, because just like we've said today, they're the ones when they call 911. They're the ones that, if they're in an accident, they depend on our firefighters and our paramedics to respond quickly and be there. Colleagues, once again today on the front page of the Daily Breeze, an article, and Jack, you'll be interested in this. They're preaching to the choir when they tell me this, but once again, ports are vulnerable to terrorist attack, says the FBI. The studies are still out there that our ports have lagged way behind in terms of security funding from the Homeland Security Department. And we have chemical tank farms. We have 6 million containers that we do not know what is in them coming through the harbor next to San Pedro and Wilmington. And frankly, if something were to happen, those people that we will depend on to respond quickly are our firefighters and our paramedics down in the harbor area. And I, for one, am proud to stand up and support them. And again, I want to thank Pat McCosker and the leadership of our firefighters. It really has felt like a family discussion. It really has felt like we've been talking in our living room. We're in tough times. They've been willing to give. But colleagues, this is our time to thank them for their service and honor them with this increase. So I hope we support this.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much. Firefighters don't say maybe when they get the call. They say, I'm there. And today, I think it's only appropriate that we go through with this MOU because this is our way of saying to our firefighters and paramedics, to our safety teams, that we are there for you as well, that we value you. And we value the fact that you are not the only one who goes out on the call. For those of you who have family members or friends or loved ones who are actually police officers and firefighters, you know that when they get the call, you don't sleep very well, knowing that they're putting their life on the line. We could never pay them enough. We could never pay them what they're worth. But at least what we need to do is honor our commitment when we negotiate with them, that we keep that commitment. And at the same time, we need to keep in mind the fact that in this agreement, we don't have it just verbally, we have it in writing. We have it in writing that this MOU will be reopened should the disaster strike that may be pending from Sacramento when it comes to our overall budget in this city. So at the same time, we are being responsible. Some people might say we're being emotional. I don't think we're being emotional, as we are being specifically responsible by saying these negotiations have gone on in good faith. Both sides have agreed in writing that this will be reopened if necessary should disaster financially hit our city. And at the same time, I'd like to say thank you to Bernard Parks, our budget chairman, for bringing this debate forward in this public forum so that we can reaffirm to the public that we do have priorities in this city and that we do have methodology in which we do espouse and follow, and that this is a very important MOU, not only for the council, but for the entire city, and not just for the firefighters, but for the safety of everyone. Because in every sense, we want to make sure that not only do we have a quantitative but a qualitative public safety environment in this city, and it requires a balance. And that balance is something that we have to keep in mind, like we are on this day, reaffirming this debate that our firefighters, our paramedics are paramount to this city. And at the same time, what is also paramount is the fiscal responsibility of this city. And I think that this MOU does strike that balance. And the fact that our firefighters and paramedics were willing to put in writing saying, we understand. We will also answer the call and make more sacrifices if necessary, should that day come financially that this city needs to renegotiate with us. So I think that they are being true to their word. I think they're being honorable. And at the same time, I think they have struck a tremendous balance with this city in making sure that they're willing to do their part in every way possible.
Thank you very much. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Cardenas, that was well said. And everybody, it's been a good debate. Everyone, you can't really call it a debate. Almost everyone's pretty much agreeing with each other. But everybody has spoken really clearly of the commitment this council feels towards our firefighters. I just want to say two things. One, Ms. Hahn, you're absolutely right. I mean, I didn't see that story this morning, but we are still extraordinarily vulnerable. The port is vulnerable. The airport is vulnerable. In my view, the whole city is vulnerable. And that's why this is truly the very minimum we can do for these extraordinary first responders that we have in this city. It's absolutely the least we can do. And I can't help but recall the debate we had in Plum a couple weeks ago, then the matter that was brought to council last week involving the fire station, Ms. Misikowski's district, and how hard she worked to ensure that that fire station would have the ability to do the training that those firefighters needed, and how neighbors, understandably, but still, I think, reaching a little too far, wanted to ask us to limit the amount of training firefighters could do at a fire station. I mean, how can you tell these people who will, at a moment's notice, put themselves on the line, put their own lives on the line, make widows and orphans potentially of their family members, how can you tell them they can't train when they want to train? I don't know how you could possibly do that. And similarly, we all know the budget difficulties we have. That's what we discussed yesterday in Sacramento. I know that we will work through it collaboratively, if necessary, with all city employees. But I'm very proud to stand with all of you today in supporting this important contract. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weiss. I'd like to recognize Ms. Gruhl as our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. A lot has been said, and I don't want to repeat all of the important comments and statements that have been made about our firefighters, the fact that they do put their lives on the line, that they protect us. Today's item that we have before us supports those firefighters and at the same time puts people on the same level playing field as we address the budget issue. And if we at all hope we never have to come back and renegotiate it all, it does open that, gives us some protection. But I think most importantly, we're here today to support our firefighters who are so vital to our city. And who have been there for us, and today we're standing with them as well. So I wanted just to compliment my colleagues who have said many of the items that I would have mentioned, but support the resolution before us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gruhl. Mr. Reyes.
When I rise to echo everything that's been said, I don't think more needs to be said about the commitment that has already been demonstrated by our firefighters. But I do want to take this opportunity to thank them for their diligence, their professionalism. Colleagues, one of the busiest fire stations is in my district in MacArthur Park. It's an area where we have over 35,000 folks per square mile. I used to say 25, but now we're doing our analysis on our demographics. It's close to 35 now. In Lincoln Heights, I already have over 25,000 persons per square mile. And the fire captains, they've gone out of their way to get to know the community. They have done a great job in creating a presence and letting folks know that this is their firehouse. And so for that, I thank them. But I just want to emphasize their level of commitment and professionalism when it comes to an area that is so dense like MacArthur Park, for their hard work. And I rarely get to say this in public. I just want to put that forth for the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. I'd like to recognize Mr. Ludlow.
Call the question.
All right, colleagues, the question has been called. If there's no objection, let's open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote on the question. Just everybody know, I know there's discussion. Let's open the roll. Keep it open, everybody. The roll is open on the item. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes, 1 no.
That ordinance is approved. Thank you very much, colleagues. Next item.
Oh, could I?
That will be forthwith, please, to the mayor. Next item.
Item number 13 was called special by Councilmember Zine.
Hold on one second, Mr. Zine. Did you want to be recognized, Ms. Hahn?
Yes, I would just know if this is appropriate time to ask for reconsideration of item 36.
Yes. Why don't we do that briefly, Mr. Zine? If we can reconsider 36, if there's no objection. Ms. Hahn is doing that for me. I was not in the room at the time, but we wanted to continue that. Please open the roll on reconsideration. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
And if we can continue that until
Second week of March.
second week in March. Okay. Without
Second,
objection.
I'm sorry, second week in March? March 9th?
Sure. Let's do March 9th. Without objection, we will continue that. Thank you. Let us return then to item 13, and I'd like to recognize Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. On this item, while there's no impact on the general fund, they've done focus groups, et cetera, and we're looking at expenditures that will run up to $1 million for outside counsel. And I'd like to know what the city attorney has in staff, in-house staff, that has dealt with this. And coming from the Information Technology General Services Committee, I know the problems that have occurred with our cable operations. But my question is, we're expending more and more on outside counsel when I thought we had a staff within our city attorney's office that dealt with this. And my question is, while we're not impacting the general fund and there's a transfer that goes to the general fund from the fees that we receive, I thought that the level of experience and dedication from our city attorney's office was adequate. So I'd like some explanation from the city attorney's office as to why we have to keep going to outside counsel to handle these situations with the contracts with the cable industry that seem to continue to cause our constituents saga after saga and frustration after frustration, especially with some that have been in the news within the recent months. So if we could have the number of city attorneys, deputy city attorneys in the office handling this, and why we don't have that experience, since we have people, as I understand, assigned full-time to handling IT and the cable operations. And if you hold my time, please, Mr. President, push that button on hold. Thank you. If you'll identify yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, if I may. Yeah, Phil Lamb, Deputy City Attorney, General Counsel for ITA. I think that's a very good question, Councilman Sine. Exactly. Simply put, the cable franchise process comes once every 10, 15 years. And it's a lot of money at stake. And for the city attorney, traditionally, we do not have the outside expertise and staff it for 10, 15 years for something that comes around only once 10, 15 years. And the dollar amount at stake is typically $20 to $25 million per year annual income to the city. And for example, in the last 14 months or so, the outside counsel has assisted us in many fronts. For example, in fighting with Adelphia on two major fronts. One in the bankruptcy court in Eastern New York, in obtaining a court order to lift the automatic stay to allow Adelphia to pay the ongoing franchise fee, which Adelphia would not have to pay under the automatic stay of the bankruptcy law. On another front, as your counsel acted on May 30th last year, instituting a rate order, ordering a rate rollback of Adelphia, and that alone benefited the citizens of Los Angeles in millions of dollars of refund. In addition to that, we took in about $2.6 of franchise payment as a result of that too. So those are just two examples of why outside expertise have been very, very helpful.
How many people do we have in the city attorney's office assigned to this IT, the information technology, dealing with cable operations?
Currently, we have 2.5, if you will. One person full-time assigned to cable franchise. Another person would be myself, still overseeing the matter, cable and non-cable, in addition to my charter, which is intellectual property. And so our office has been very vigilant in making sure that the proper and the best staff is assigned to this very important task.
Well, I know that your dedication, because I've seen you leave close to midnight from the parking structure, and I know you're very dedicated to the people of Los Angeles and as a deputy city attorney and the hard work you do. If we don't have that expertise, if we don't have it in-house, I can understand why we need to go outside to make sure. I didn't know how many we had involved in the city attorney's office. So if there's only 2.5 people handling it, and I know these are very expensive contracts with a lot of expertise necessary, and the transfer, the concern I have is the transfer that comes into the general fund from the fees. The more that we bring in transfer, the better it is for the city of Los Angeles. Then we're paying outside counsel. Those monies are drawn from those transfer fees that would generally be coming into our general fund.
Correct. The better the service we have, legal service we have, the more fund or income we can procure from the cable companies. Otherwise, we will have lost more.
And this won't be an ongoing with the outside counsel. Once we get these finalized, then we'll just use our deputy city attorneys that we have in-house? In other words, we're not going to keep them going for years and years and years.
That is the plan, correct.
Okay. You've answered my questions. Thank you. And thank you for your service, because I know that you're on top of all those issues. I thought you had all that expertise.
I like to have two.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zion. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this? Seeing none, let us open the roll on the item. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 eyes.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. That is approved. Next item.
Mr. President, I believe Mr. Parks has a presentation. Do you wish to take that
Yes,
up?
we'd like to recognize Mr. Parks for a presentation on a very important retirement. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask Bob Canfield to come up. And that's Pat Canfield, also a city employee. Come on up. Keith Comrie, former CAO. We have a very special person here today who's retiring twice from the city of Los Angeles. Bob Canfield, after 23 years of service, retired from the Los Angeles Police Department. But I think what we have to remember, what Bob has done for the police department, he's been a part of several firsts. He was the person that was involved with our first automated emergency command and control system, the 911 system. He was the one that was involved in putting that together. He also was the person that supervised much of our emergency planning and training, getting ready for the 1984 Olympics. If I'm not mistaken, he was also the first officer in charge of our domestic violence training program that got us off on a good foot. That's right. Also, he co-developed the city's first emergency management workshop with FEMA, dealing with the National Emergency Training Center at Emmitsburg, Maryland, also in preparation for the '84 Olympics. He joined the CAO staff in '89 and became the city's first emergency preparedness coordinator. He also played a role in creating an evolution in the whole city's preparedness program, just as we've given Councilman Burnson the accolades for putting the city on the cutting edge of dealing with earthquakes. I think we have to look at Bob Canfield as the person that's developed most of our emergency preparedness operations training, our cadres, our equipment for the city of Los Angeles. And it does not go unnoticed nationwide that the city of Los Angeles is often viewed as #1 in this area. Because of his expertise, he has represented the city as in inspection teams with the Hurricane Hugo, the Oakland Berkeley, East Bay Hills Fire, Hurricane Andrew, and the great, Hassid earthquake. He also served as a commissioner for the Emergency Preparedness Commission for the county, the City of Los Angeles, and also held the office of chair in 1998. I would just like to thank Bob because he worked for me personally as he developed the domestic violence training for the Los Angeles Police Department. But then to say thank you for all the things that he's done, and although he has not had his name placed on a building or in a room, he has certainly left a legacy in the sense of all the things that he created. Every time an officer picks up a radio and talks to the communications center, every time they get a computer-aided dispatch call, they have to go back and realize that Bob Canfield was the one that started that process several decades ago. And I would just like to say thank you on behalf of the LA City Council for your well over 3 decades of work in 2 very important assignments, LAPD and the Emergency Preparedness Department. I'd like to ask... I'd like to ask Keith Comrie to come up and make a presentation. Also a person that put a great deal of his life in emergency preparedness as our CAO.
Thank you very much. Bob, I met first when he arranged the training in Emmitsburg for all of the city departments. Did a phenomenal job of that, came onto the CAO staff later and continued to do that. And this is the quiet person in the background that gets the work done. I only need to tell you, since some of you are new, the Northridge earthquake was a disaster for the city. But unlike Florida, when they were still in tents 6 months later, we had our citizens in permanent housing within 2 or 3 weeks, and Bob was key to doing a lot of that work. The board itself, made up of the police chief, fire chief, and all significant city departments that are involved in this, some dozen operations, gives an award once a year to somebody who's very special to them, and it's always to a staff member, and I'm pleased to present that to Bob Canfield from the Emergency Operations Board.
While we're taking that picture and giving our congratulations, I'd like to recognize a few council members to say a few words as well, starting with Councilmember Greg Smith.
Let me ask the General Manager of Emergency Preparedness, Ellis Stanley, to make some remarks.
I'll be very brief. You've heard all the stuff that Bob has done. Bob, when I got here, and he won't let me call him an ex-Marine, he's a former Marine. He is an ex-police officer. He's a Marine. And, but in all of doing all of that, Bob's commitment has never been stronger to this community and this city than it has been in the emergency management arena. And where we are today is definitely, Bob is responsible for that. We've appreciated his tenure here with the city and all aspects of his tenure here in the city. And we know where he is, and we're continuing to tap his institutional knowledge. And Bob, is, as he goes away to play with his grandchildren and all, is still going to be involved. And I know his heart will always be with the city of Los Angeles. And Bob, congratulations on your retirement.
Just before we hear Mr. Smith, to be followed by Mr. Zahn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't have the fortune of working with Mr. Canfield at the police department, but back in the old days, and it was a long time ago now, Mr. Burnson, my former boss, was the kind of Mr. Earthquake around town. But there was a guy that always came over for them, the old Emergency Operations Board, before there was even a department, that came over to work with Hal to implement all the ideas that Hal had and see that the things that we wanted to get done actually got done. And Bob was the guy, was the go-to guy. He always came in our office, we said, let's do this, or he came in and said, we should do that, and we had just an incredible working relationship. And that strong relationship, and I know I'm talking for Hal now as well as myself, it was that incredible working relationship between you and the board at the time, and then later the department, that wrote the most stringent earthquake laws in America and brought our emergency forces together in a working relationship that no other city, I think, has on the degree that we have in LA. And Bob was the center force that made all that come together and made it work. And in 1994, as Mr. Comrie said, and as Ellis was talking about, when it really happened, we were ready. And we were ready because of your work on getting our forces to work together to be prepared for that unfortunate moment when it came. And I can tell you there are thousands of people in this city whose lives were probably saved because of the work you did. And there were many, many thousands, tens of thousands of people that got back in their homes, that got back on their feet because of the work you did that don't even know who you are. But I hope today that we can tell them through the television and other sources that Bob Canfield was the guy that helped put this all back together and put the city back together, and you are really the go-to guy. And I know we can say a lot of nice things about you, but the most important gift we give you, besides a pension from the police department, a pension from the city, is you met your lovely wife, Pat, working on earthquakes through the CAO's office. And so as a parting gift, we give you Pat Canfield forever. And congratulations. It's been a pleasure working for you and with you. You're truly, yeah, show that ring. You're a great asset to the city of Los Angeles, and I can't tell you how many tens of thousands of people owe you their thanks today, but I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Burns and myself. I'm giving you those thanks for all those tens of thousands of people.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Zine?
Thank you, Mr. President. Bob, how many years ago were we working over in Van Nuys?
About 30.
About 30 years ago. I remember those days. And
You were just a kid then.
I was just a kid. Well, you were a kid back then too, and I remember all those years in the department, and then you made this real smooth transition working, because you always worked emergency operations in one sort or another, and I know you were attendance at the FBI Academy and all your different assignments, all those years with the LAPD. It seems like a blink. The time has gone by so quickly, and to think you're retiring, your wife's still working, isn't she? Yes. Okay. Well, that's what Maggie Wayland, General Manager of Personnel, her husband retired, she's still working, which is good to keep that city paycheck coming in. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a benefit. But all your dedication, all the years, and I know you've always been LAPD, disciplined, professional the entire time. And working in the emergency operation of the city has been the same thing. I didn't even know you retired until someone mentioned it recently, because you always got the job done and you weren't pounding the drum, tooting the horn like some of us do frequently, but you were always the person making those successes come true. So it's a compliment to you, but it's hard to believe that all those years have just floated away, but the commitment, the dedication has been there many, many, many years. And I'm glad you're going to finally enjoy that retirement, the second time retirement, and continue on with health and prosperity as you wake your wife up every morning and say, honey, it's time to go to work. Good luck to both of you and the family. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zine. Mr. Labange.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, Bob. Congratulations to you. And Keith, good to see you again. And when I think of Bob Canfield, I think of also Michael Reagan. Is that correct? Who was your predecessor in the CAO's office?
And Shirley Mattingly.
And Shirley Mattingly, all in between that. But also, Michael was a Los Angeles police officer who worked with my grandfather in the late 30s and 40s in Los Angeles. And then you're a police officer. And as Councilmember Parks described in the resolution, how you contributed there and then moved on to the CAO's office and now into this department. You were very methodical, which is so important. So important in a disaster that there's someone who has the sense of all the confusion that's going on, but to methodically put it back together. Having worked here for 28 years and been around with the 1987 Whittier earthquake, which did impact the city of Los Angeles, and the big earthquake in Northridge in 1994, which originally should have been a Reseda earthquake, right? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The epicenter was in Reseda, but they got it off on Northridge. Maybe the university and Hal Burnson had some, or maybe Greg Smith, the chief deputy, had some influence on where they called that challenging disaster. But that particular episode and the interplay, because at that time I was a director of field operations for the Mayor Reardon of Los Angeles at that time, and how you put it all back together. And it's a wonderful thing. You've contributed greatly to the creation of this department that used to be in the CAO's office. You contributed greatly to widening the community's knowledge on disaster preparedness and awareness, and you've done it just simultaneously with all the other confusion that goes on. You're really a credit to your upbringing and your own knowledge and your schools that you went to and your professional life with the Los Angeles Police Department and with the City Administrative Officer. Bob, I want to thank you because a number of times I've called you over my career and you always had the right suggestion to solve a particular problem or to garner community support to achieve a goal. I thank you and your wife for your service to the City of Los Angeles and wish you a long, long, long retirement in the coming years and months. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. Bob, the microphone is yours.
Oh, well, thank you very much. As the chief said, I had the privilege of working, as the councilman said, he'll always be the chief to me. I had the privilege of working for the chief twice in my career. In fact, when I retired from the police department in 1989 and we went to lunch, the chief was with me. And I was born in this city at Manchester and Broadway, and that was 60 years ago. And I've worked for the city more than 37 years, and I've always felt that the city was a wonderful employer. I always had my check at the right place every 2 weeks, and I can't say enough for all of the good things and good people I worked with. You gave me a lot of credit for a lot of things that have happened. None of those things would have happened if it hadn't been for the great people that I had to work with, some of who came out here this morning. I really appreciate that. And I just want to say thank you very much. We haven't recognized my oldest daughter, who's in her mid-30s here, Chris.
But doesn't look a day over 29.
The mother
Not a day over 29.
Two of my grandchildren here in California, and then I have two grandchildren outside in another state, and Pat and I have the pleasure of being able to go to both places, and you have her for another couple years, and then that'll be it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Parks. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Bob, for all you've given to the city. Let us move to the next item on the agenda.
Mr. President, item number 36 was continued to March 9th, and that will be a council recess. So do you wish to continue that matter instead to the 12th?
Yeah, let's make it March 12th on that item.
Okay, thank you. Next items 15 and 16 were called special by Councilmember Miskowski. They're Commerce, Energy, Natural Resources Committee reports.
Would you like to take those together, Ms. Miskowski? Okay. Items 15, 16. Ms. Miskowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I was just calling to give you sort of an update, which item 15 and 16 are. They're reasonably large contracts or amendments to contracts that exist at the airport for the master plan. Unlike some that we've had in the past, there is really no controversy on these. This is the effort that needs to be taken with the existing entities to deliver a completion of a process, to deliver to the City Council a document, deliver to the Airport Commission a document known as the Environmental Impact Report, a final document which will include the earlier versions of A, B, and C, and that analysis, as well as Alternative D, in the supplemental EIR, putting that all together and putting together then a package and a recommendation to the Airport Commission and the City Council. It really is taking a little bit more time, but because of the process that we're all aware of and the difficulties, that time is appropriate. In these amendments, particularly, there are now deliverable penalties, and that is for not meeting a deliverable on time. The contractors who are receiving this award are going to have pay withheld or pay deducted from their contract for not meeting the deliverables on schedule. I think we've all been awaiting this analysis and then the alternatives for which we then can have honest, serious debate, dialogue, and hopefully reach a conclusion that we find some consensus for on a master plan for the City of Los Angeles LA World Airports. I just called this special to bring this to your attention, to let you know we are on target, and the on-target time will be to have this document completed for certification sometime in spring, getting to the Commission in late spring, early summer, and the City Council in midsummer, perhaps early fall. So sharpen your pencils, clear your desks for the delivery of this document, and the then very, very hopefully intense discussion around the Airport Commission and the City Council as to what a future master plan for Los Angeles World Airport should be. So I just call that a specialist to give you that update. At the same time, as you know, the last time an item was before us was a question on an RFP for advanced planning. That RFP has been let, bids are being received, and there will be some review of that, and we will be looking very carefully. Just to mention, a third item that's not on the agenda today was a third contract, and that third contract did have some questions. It's a legal contract, and the parameters of that contract and how that contract was being executed. The chair of the committee, Mr. Cardenas, had some concerns. So that one is not before you today because it needs a little bit more review before we can bring it forward with a recommendation. But these two, no conflict, on target to get us to a point where we can then have the serious debate.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miskowski. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this? If not, let us open the roll on the items. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 eyes.
Those items are approved. Next order of business, please.
Item number 44, call special by Councilmember Labange.
Okay, Mr. Labange, we've got item number 44. Why don't we take that up at this time? Mr. Labange, you led us in that great Pledge of Allegiance this morning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Garcetti. I appreciate that. This particular item here is very, I think we've got to look because some of the challenges are in all our neighborhoods where we have preferential parking districts near open space, public parks, etc. And this calls for us to come up with a right way to deal with it. We want to send it to the department, then send it back to the Transportation Committee of City Council for their review. But in a particular park in my district, a very popular park is Runyon Canyon. Runyon Canyon, a beautiful park, probably one of the greatest walks because of your acceleration. It also is dog off-leash area, about 200 to 300 meters from the entrance gates on east and west side. But the impact in the neighborhood is overwhelming because it's so popular and they have restricted parking. And Alan Willis is here. Alan, come up to the center table. You came over to City Hall. We'll let everybody know you're working hard for the Department of Transportation. I'm going to just have them take a minute, and if you give an analysis of this measure for what you think could do it, you could come back to committee. We're going to Mr. Villaraigosa's committee. But give us a little background, please. This is a suggestion by my deputy, Michelle Fleenor. I'm very proud of her thinking on this.
Yes, Alan Willis with the Department of Transportation. We have a very interesting policy issue at this location. We have a park that attracts a lot of people to it, but it has inadequate parking. And the places where people have tended to park is on the surrounding streets. The residents petitioned for a preferential parking district and originally had a 2-hour time limit on the parking in that area or the choice of a no parking any time. They had the 2-hour for a while, and then they basically said they were fed up with all of the trash and everything else that was left by the dog park visitors and their pets. And so they petitioned us to have the signs changed from 2-hour parking to no parking. That caused the people that use the park to counter petition to change the rules and allow that there would be allow that there would always be parking next to a park. And so we've got to look at those issues and figure out what's the best way to address them.
Thank you, Alan. And members, I just ask that we have an aye vote on this, and then it comes back to committee for further consideration. And it's also something we may send to your neighborhood councils for their deliberation as it impacts parking in communities throughout the city. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange.
Excuse me, Mr. Labange, your motion recommends that go back to Arts Parks. Do you want that to add transportation?
Transportation. And then it go to Arts and Parks too, but after transportation, because you have to get on the street before you can get to the park.
Thank you. Then we'll add that to the motion.
All right. Skillfully done, Mr. Labange. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Labange, thank you for your hard work and your staff for that creative thinking. But just as challenging for many of us, since we know that certain areas of the city have more parks than others, that's just a fact of life. And those areas that don't have those parks, but a few precious pocket parks, is where you tend to have the highest number of people living around those small pocket parks, given that those are the oldest parts of the city. So the challenge we have is, how do we acknowledge that pressure so that the local folks who are already fighting for parking don't get pushed out of that access? And I'm glad you sent it to Transportation Committee. I'd like to have my deputies be able to present those issues and make sure that we address all the nuances of our diverse, rich city that has so much going for it, but as well as, the challenges in dealing with this demand for parking. Sometimes our pocket parks serve as a multiplicity of uses, especially when we have kids playing in hallways, kids playing in stairwells, fire escapes, because there's nowhere else to play. And as a result, pocket parks become the place where they can go. But then you have competing groups. Local schools, students who don't have parking will park on the side streets, take up that parking. So it gets complicated. It's not a soundbite response or answer. So I'm glad we're sitting in Transportation Committee, but for the record, I wanted to put that forward so that that particular concern can be addressed as we proceed forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Other members wishing to be heard on this item? Seeing none, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 eyes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 46 was called special by Councilmember Perry, and there are cards on the item.
Okay, Ms. Perry, did you wish to speak before we go to public comment?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is a technical action today in an attempt to try to mitigate a very sad and unfortunate situation with the farmers having to be relocated. I have made it a high priority to locate land which is under city control or under government control so that we can find alternatives so that the gardeners can continue working and tending their gardeners uninterrupted while the size of this parcel of land doesn't compare to the Lancer site. It is a small drop in the bucket, but it can accommodate a number of gardeners on there. And so I have requested that the Department of General Services execute a lease with the Garden Council, which is a 501c3 that has been working with this particular garden, but works with many of the gardens throughout the entire city and is a nonprofit that is held in high regard to work with our Department of General Services to execute this lease
Maria?
so that at least we can get something in the pipeline to try to mitigate this situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Perry. Let's now go to public comment, and then we'll return for additional council discussion. The first card, I'll apologize, I can't read the name. S. Deacon, want to finish that for me? To be followed by Margarito Salgado, Josefina Micha, Dr. Sandra Moore, and other speakers to follow. Members of the public and members of the council, I'm going to ask the clerk to please put up a 10-minute public comment clock for all of us to see. And I'll ask the public speakers to please keep their comments brief. We've heard this matter before. We've heard this matter before, both in the full council and in committee. So a lot of what you're about to say, we've heard, we know, but we want to give you the opportunity to be heard. So we would appreciate your brevity, and we can move forward with our consideration of the matter. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to bore you, but this has not been heard before. First of all, we'd like to be on the record to say that we're totally opposed
Okay,
to
you
47.
are on the record, sir. This is public comment.
And let me say, in a very brief way, that we're asking District 15 and District 14 to actively be about the business of finding the farmers someplace to go. That this recommendation is an insult to the community. I have in the audience the third speaker, Dr. Sandra Moore, who would like very much to accept us in Watts at the Lancet site, and that's someplace I'm sure that the farmers would like to go. The problem here is, and that this has never been addressed to the extent that I want to address it this morning, and that is a continuing disregard of the farmers themselves. As a representative of a neighborhood council, Vernon, Maine Neighborhood Council, the problem is in communication, meaning that Ms. Perry does not want to deal in good faith or in honesty with the South Central farmers. I would like to put on the record, representing the farmers, and they're behind me, that the Garden Association upon which she desires to go into contract with has no relationship in the future, maybe in the past, but certainly in the future, with the South Central farmers. They will be about the business of finding another nonprofit to work with. If Ms. Perry wants to go into contract with that Garden Council, let them go into contract, the city that is, with the Garden Council, but scratch the South Central farmers out of this measure. They do not and will not go to a place that is only 2 cars wide when they're leaving 14 acres.
Okay, thank you, sir. I want to also allow the other speakers to be heard. Margarito Salgado.
My name is Margarito Salgado. We have not yet satisfactory answer to our problem to continue with our traditions. I would like to give you some pictures for what we have and what is the 5863. Can you pass around to the... This is what we have, and this is what the new one, sir. I would like that you realize that the plot on 5863 wall is not enough for 347 families because it is too small. It is 3/4 of this room size. Can you believe it? Can you accommodate 347 families in something 3/4 of this? It's impossible. We really are peaceful people. We really are honest people. We really are positive people. So we need a very, very intelligent and satisfactory solution, and not the 5863 wall.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Josefina Micha, followed by Dr. Sandra Moore, Valentin Diaz, and Luvianos Rumbos. And I'll call your attention to the clock. We have 6.5 minutes left on the clock.
Excuse me, she's going to need some translation.
I'll hold her time during the translation. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My English is not very well. This is the reason I need to translate, please. La razón que estamos aquí
The reason why we're here
es porque nos están queriendo dar supuestamente
because they're supposed to want to give us
una tercera parte de este lugar
1/3 of this place
en donde no podríamos acomodarnos 300 familias.
where 300 families could not be accommodated.
Señores, ustedes exigen respeto, nosotros también necesitamos respeto.
Gentlemen, you ask for respect, we also need respect.
Cuando ustedes hacen campaña,
When you
prometen ayudar a la gente que vota por ustedes.
When you campaign, you promise to help people that vote for you.
A hoy necesitamos la ayuda de ustedes.
Now we need your help.
Recuerden que nosotros tenemos hijos que han crecido en ese jardín.
Remember that we have children that have grown in that garden.
Ellos le tienen amor a la tierra
They love the soil
porque nosotros se las hemos enseñado nuestra cultura
because we have taught them our culture,
y ellos van a ser los futuros ingenieros agrónomos, maestros en cultura.
they're going to be the future agronomists, engineers in culture.
Que ellos van a poder mejorar nuestras siembras en el país
They're going to better our cultivations in the country.
y, por qué no decirlo, en el resto del mundo,
And why not say it in the rest of the world?
en donde la tierra ya no produce, porque muchas veces
Where the soil doesn't produce anymore because many times
no se sabe cultivar.
it's not known how to cultivate it.
Nosotros hemos aprendido de nuestros padres
We have learned from our parents
que la tierra responde cuando nosotros la cuidamos con cariño.
that the soil responds when we take care of it with care.
Esa es la razón que nosotros les pedimos
That's the reason why we're asking you
que nos den o nos dejen más bien donde estamos, pero si no es posible,
But to give us or to leave us where we are, or if it's not possible,
que nos den algo similar
to give us something similar.
de la medida del jardín, no un acre o menos.
The measurements of the garden, not 1 acre or less.
Gracias. Si puede concluir, por favor.
Gracias.
Okay. Dr. Sandra Moore.
Good morning, Mr. Padilla. Good morning, City Council. I'm here and I'll be brief. I came today to support the South Central farmers. As an American citizen of this great country, we have the right to own and to inhabit and to work the land in our own communities. We have the right to exercise the right to work that land and inhabit it. To arbitrarily move people from 14 acres to 1 acre, and we see this happening. We do not agree with it, and my people, the people that I represent today, 1,500 residents of Watts, have joined with the South Central farmers. And we're saying to you this morning, Ms. Perry, Janice Hahn, we'll be at your office to talk to you because we say no more. Give these people the right to cultivate that land and find something, if you must remove them, amenable to the same space. 1 acre compared to 14 acres is ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Valentin Diaz, Eriogenes Luvianos Rumbos, Javier Ramirez, Gerardo Vaquero.
Mi nombre es Valentín Díaz.
Excuse me, this gentleman also is going to need translation, please.
Yo lo único que quiero decir y declarar estas cosas, que lo que estas personas, la señora Jan Perry y Juanita Tey,
All I want to do is that Jan Perry
y Juanita Tey
Juanita Day
han destrozado nuestro patrimonio,
have destroyed our patrimony.
lo que han hecho con nuestra gente mayores como yo,
What they have done with people older like myself
es que ya van 2 muertos.
is that there already been 2 dead people.
Es lo único que han hecho ellos.
That's the only thing they have done.
Nos están quitando lo único que tenemos,
They're taking away the only thing that we have
porque a ellos les sobra.
because they have more than enough.
Y si nos van a quitar el terreno,
And if they're going to take away the
no es
parcel,
justo.
it's not fair.
Tengan un consentimiento
Have a knowledge
de lo que están haciendo.
of what you're doing.
Yo soy un representante de los
I'm a representative of
347 campesinos
the
que
340
estamos allí.
farmers that are there.
Yo les pido justicia.
I'm asking for justice.
Es todo. Gracias.
Thank you.
Luvianos Rumbos, followed by Javier Ramirez, Gerardo Vaquero, Josefina Salgado, or as much as 2 minutes will afford us. Go ahead.
Buenos días, señores concejales. Good morning. Estamos por esta causa luchando, que no es justo lo que dijo el compañero,
We're fighting for this because it's not just.
que no es justo por 2 personas que siempre se pronuncia, que son las personas indicadas, que son las primeras que dicen que desalojemos.
Because there's 2 people that always say,
Tengo en el sur centro viviendo de 1977.
I've been living in South Central since 1977.
Mis hijos crecieron allí.
My children grew up there.
Aunque no lo quieran creer que eso tengo, pero hay pruebas que eso es lo que tengo yo viviendo ahí.
Even though you might not believe, I have proof that I've been living there.
Entonces queríamos un patrimonio para nuestros hijos, verlos, qué es lo que produce la tierra.
So we want something for our children to see what the soil produces.
Produce muchas cosas de alimento, plantas medicinales.
It produces a lot of food, medicinal plants.
Aunque no está de no creerse, mi esposa es diabética ya por vida.
Even though you may not believe it, my wife is diabetic for life.
Y allí hay plantas medicinales,
And there are some medicinal plants there,
las que cultivamos.
the ones we grow.
Entonces, ¿por qué? Por nomás por 2, 3 personas, señores concejales, yo quisiera que nos ayudaran,
So then why is it because of 2 or 3 people, I wish you could help us?
porque estamos en un país que somos un poquito, que vemos raza de todo el mundo.
Because we're in a country that there's a little bit of every race in the world.
Yo creo que no es mucho pedir después de que seamos también un poquito que vivimos y crecimos en este sur centro de Los Ángeles.
I don't think it's asking too much for people who have grown here in South Central Los Angeles.
Analícenlo y mírenlo si estamos en nuestro derecho poquito o no.
Analyze it and see if we are on our rights, yes or no.
Gracias.
Porque yo miro que también aquí hay gente que somos mexicanos y por eso queremos, si pueden, darnos esa ayuda, por favor.
Because I see people that are Mexican here and I just want to see whether you can give us that help also, please.
Es dicho, gracias.
I've said, thank you.
Javier Ramírez,
Sí.
Gerardo Vaquero, and I think Gerardo will be our final speaker as we have 1 minute left. Gerardo será el último.
Sí, buenos días, disculpen, me perdonen si los ofendo.
Good morning, I'm sorry if I offend you.
Somos campesinos de Alameda y 41.
We are
Disculpe,
farmers of
nosotros los más pobres.
I'm sorry, we're the poorest ones.
Para ustedes no somos
For you-
nada,
for
porque
you, we are
tenemos,
nothing because we have
que andar todo el tiempo siguiéndolos y no nos hacen
we have
caso.
to be following you all the time and you don't listen to us.
No dan una respuesta a nuestro problema.
You don't give us a response to our problem.
Está en ustedes toda la solución.
It's in you,
Sabemos,
all the solution. We know
sabemos que dice el dicho que la riata se rompe por lo más delgado.
there's a saying that the rope tears on the thinnest place.
Y eso nos pasa a nosotros.
And that's what's happening to us.
Como somos los más pobres y
Since we're the
todos,
poorest,
para ustedes les damos como lástima o quién sabe
it's
qué.
like you feel pity towards us or something.
Y creen que somos una carga para el Estado, pues no lo somos,
and you
ni
think-
queremos serlo.
And you think that we are a burden to the state or something, but we don't want to be.
Por eso queremos tierra para trabajar,
That's what we want, land to work,
para sembrar lo que
to
consumimos.
plant what we consume.
Y recuerden que nosotros somos humanos,
And remember that we are
igual que
human,
todos ustedes.
the same as all of you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This will conclude the public comment on this item. We do have a card from Josefina Salgado and Alma Flores. We will add it to the file. We want to thank you for being here. We now return to council discussion. Ms. Perry, followed by Mr. Villaraigosa.
President, one closing remark. This is just a first step in what will be a very long process. It has never been the intention of myself nor my office to put 300 gardeners on this small piece of property. This is a property that is adjacent to a nonprofit after-school youth and activities program in the community, and had originally planned to expand, but plans didn't work out. So this is a piece of property under the control of the City of Los Angeles. And in an attempt to make sure that there was a place for some of the gardeners to be able to go prior to the time that they may have to depart from the Lancer site, I thought it would be most effective to focus on those properties that are under the control of the City of Los Angeles. This is a property that is not as large as 14 acres. It may be an acre at best, but can accommodate some of the gardeners, not all of the gardeners, and that has always been made evident not only in our hearings, but in all of our communications. And I'm sure that some of the gardeners are aware of, but let me say it again, that I have been in contact with the MTA about the non-revenue connector that cuts across or bisects the 9th Council District. It is quite large. We have continued these discussions and will continue them, and it's my hope that we'll be able to locate as many people on the non-revenue connector as possible. But as you might imagine, it's a little bit complicated because you know, they were saving that property for a possible expansion of MTA lines in the future. But that seems to be, for me, at least in the 9th Council District, my best and greatest hope for providing some opportunity for the gardens to be able to continue to garden unless somebody else comes and offers me some land from another council district or another part of the city. I don't have 14 acres that are fully assembled. Love to have it. Love to accept a contribution. If somebody has some money to buy it, whatever, let me know. You know my number. You know where I am. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Villaraigosa.
Yes, I want to thank Councilmember Perry for her work here. I don't think this is only Councilmember Perry's responsibility. I think we all have a responsibility here to address the situation. Some of us are new, but you know that happens. We're still responsible for the acts or the failure to act on the part of other members of the council in other areas. And I'm going to tell you, the more I hear and talk to the people who work this garden, the more I believe that the city has a responsibility to put forth a resolution that really makes sense. So again, I commend Councilmember Perry. I recommit myself to working with the MTA, but also getting General Services to look in the 14th Councilmanic District. I'd like to work with all of the rest of our council members. I know that in the 15th District there's a 10-acre parcel of land, I think on a street by the name of Hazlitt, that may be a possible site. I think we all have a debt of responsibility on behalf of this city to try to resolve this situation. Many of us believe, I know Eric Garcetti and Councilmember Reyes and I and others have talked about what gardens can do to beautify communities. We have a lot of places that are dumps in our community that are empty lots that have been left in disrepair, and I think we're going to have to work together as a council, not just putting the burden on Councilmember Perry, but together as a council, all of us, directing our staff and the city departments to look to areas where we might be able to provide for the kind of community gardens that has been a jewel in South Los Angeles for a long time now.
Mr. Labange.
I just want to, I'm working closely with all of us together, Antonio on the MTA, but also I want to put the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, which does work with community, underneath transmission lines. We built a beautiful park that I know Mr. Garcetti would like out on the Whitnall Highway. Mr. Wax and Mr. Ferraro started it, and Ms. Gruhl and Mr. Labange and staffs and everybody else finished it, along with the mayor's office from both administrations, where they used a right-of-way with the transmission, which is so important to look at. There's no new land. Now, Ms. Hahn said to me, okay, Tom, what about Griffith Park? And I said, Janice, there's deer in Griffith Park, and deer eat fruit. And because we've had some plants and other type of shrubs that have some berries on it that get taken by the nature and the natural existence of the deer, the four-legged deer that jump across. And not that, no, Mr. Garcetti, not Gracie. Gracie is fine and eats well 3 times a meal, 3 squares at the zoo. But in all seriousness, it is a challenge, but it is a challenge we all have to work. And I look over at Ed Reyes, and Ed just gave me a little smile there. You know, where do we put places where people could get their hands dirty and feel the earth and grow a garden? That's the big challenge. I know your deputy, Mr. Garcetti, is a hero, Glenn Dake, on that issue there. But we all have to look at it. But then also we all have to be fair. Wherever we are, all Angelinos have to be fair that we're using somebody else's land. And that someday that somebody else's land may be needed for some other purpose, or that the public doesn't have a right to it. So it all has to be balanced out. I thank you, and I also want to thank always the leadership of Jan Perry in the 9th District, in addition to the gardens and the challenges of removing gardens. Last night on Broadway, in her district, they lit up the Los Angeles Theater with the new neon there. But I want to thank Jan for all the efforts she tries to bring people together in all ways possible. Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to take a moment and ask if Councilmember Perry could just the main points for that gardeners can understand what was said. Very important points were made. I see you don't have translation devices and translator wasn't there, so I want to make sure they understand. And if I may.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes, and I think it's important that the message is communicated and that people have the same information. It is not my intention to take all 300-plus gardeners from the site where they are now to this new site on Wall because obviously they would not fit.
La consejera más quería asegurar que la intención de poder traer un acre no era para mover todas las familias de los 14 acres a un acre. Esa no es la intención.
By getting city land, MTA land, it is the fastest and most efficient way for me to be able to get control over a piece of property to give the gardeners somewhere to go as soon as possible.
Lo que ha logrado es trabajar con la autoridad de transportación, MTA. Ellos sí tienen acres que pueden donar temporalmente mientras encuentran otras áreas, pero ellos sí tienen bastante terreno para poder poner los jardines.
This is just one small piece, but is a small part of a larger solution, and we are going to continue to work on the MTA, on the non-revenue connector, which is much larger, to see if I can get control over that for more gardeners.
Y lo que está sugiriendo más es una porción de una solución más grande. Por eso está trabajando con el MTA para lograr un área más amplio.
So the gardeners can work with the Garden Council to figure out a strategy for which gardeners may want to locate over to the Wall Street location as we continue to work for other solutions.
Que ojalá el Concilio de Jardineros puedan decidir quién de los jardineros pueden utilizar ese acre que ahorita está disponible y así se pueden empezar a mover a ese pedazo de terreno mientras más área se puede obtener para poder jardinar, para hacer jardines. Gracias.
Mr. Cárdenas.
Very much. Jan, I'd like to thank you once again for working on this very important issue. Some people might think it's an issue that only affects a few dozen families or, like they said, a few hundred families. But really what this is it's a model, in my opinion. To me, this is the best after-school program we could ever want or expect. I'll tell you what, when I grew up in Pacoima, I'm the youngest of 11 kids. My mother and father didn't speak much English. They only had a first and second grade education. Guess what kept me out of trouble? My father was a gardener, and I went to work with him 6 days a week. During the summer, it wasn't playtime for me. That means I had to get up earlier than having to go to school. That means I came home later, sometimes after dark, after working with my hands all day long. And guess what? My fondest memories as a child with my father was when we were working together. Because my father didn't play soccer, he didn't play basketball, he didn't play any sports, because when he was 5 years old, he had to work on the family farm. And that's all he did until the day he died. So his relationship with his boys, us five, was he would work with us. And he would teach us how to tie knots. He would teach us how to work the land. He would teach us the medicinal purposes of some of these plants and things of that nature. This is the best recipe for families to teach their children values. This is the best recipe for families to teach their kids how to be stronger individuals, how to stay out of trouble, and how to value their family, and how to value traditions. And I'll say a few words in Spanish as well. So, Jan, this is paramount. This is important. And you know what? This is probably one of the most effective ways in which this city can actually effectuate the kinds of values. And I'm not talking so much about moral or religious values. I'm just talking about the values of day-to-day life. This is a great opportunity for this city to make sure that these families have such a place. And this is a tough one, Jan. I know it's tough, and I know what you're going through. And all I want to say is, if some people are ungrateful or seem that they're not grateful for the energy that you're putting into this, I want to tell you I am. And you can count on me at any time to make sure that I can do whatever I can to make sure that you find a solution, that we find a solution and make it real for these families. Para mí eso es algo muy importante. Para mí esto es algo que yo acuerdo de mis días trabajando con mi padre diario. Él fue obrero cuando llegó a este país, campesino, y luego finalmente él era un jardinero. Yo fui el menor de 11 hijos. Yo fui a trabajar con él 6 días a la semana. En el verano no fue tiempo para jugar para mí, fue tiempo para trabajar. 6 días a la semana con mi padre. Y también es algo muy importante que sabemos que lo que ustedes están haciendo con sus hijos, con sus familias, es muy importante. Nosotros vamos invirtiendo millones de dólares cada año para tener programas donde nuestros hijos, los jóvenes van a aprender valores importantes. Y para mí eso es algo muy importante para todos nosotros, y también en el mismo tiempo tenemos que entender que Jan Perry está trabajando muy duro para solucionar esto para todos. Para mí es un ejemplo para toda la ciudad lo que ustedes están haciendo, y es un ejemplo de Jan Perry que ella sí quiere solucionar esto en la mejor manera que sea posible. Por favor, tenemos que tener esperanzas, tenemos que tener fe, y también tenemos que tener algo de paciencia, y también ustedes tienen que llegar aquí también hablando de lo que es importante para ustedes. Uno no tiene que tener educación formal para que la gente respeten a ustedes. Yo sé de eso. Y también quiero dar las gracias a ustedes por todo lo que están haciendo y por su lucha, y estamos aquí para ayudar a todos ustedes. Gracias.
Thank you. Other members wishing to be heard on this item? If not, we have Ms. Perry's motion before us. Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Mr. President, there is a special meeting. Do you wish to take the roll on that item now?
Yes, the only items remaining on this regular meeting agenda are closed session. Let's temporarily recess the regular meeting. Madam Clerk, please open the roll on the special meeting.
Cardenas, Garcetti, Gruel, Han, Labange, Ludlow, Miskowski, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Smith, Villaraigosa, Weinstein, Padilla, 15 members present.
Thank you very much. The special meeting is officially in session. We do have one item special meeting agenda. It is a closed session matter. Without objection, what we may do is continue this closed session matter to the regular meeting. That's done without objection. Let us adjourn the special meeting and consider the closed session matter in conjunction with the closed session matter appearing on the regular meeting agenda. So with the special meeting now adjourned, return to the regular meeting. Mr. Labange? Yeah, I have a card. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Do you wish to clear the desk before going into closed session?
Let's do housekeeping.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Motion shall be posted and referred.
There are excuses on the desk. President Padilla requests to be excused Friday, February 4th for city business that meets council policy.
Excuse granted.
Councilmember Perry requests to be excused Tuesday, February 17th to leave at 11 a.m. city business that meets council policy.
Excuse granted.
And Councilmember Garcetti requests to be excused Friday, February 6th to leave at 11:45, and Friday, February 13th to arrive at 11:40. Those are both for city business, and those both meet council policy.
Okay, Mr. Garcetti is excused.
And that clears the desk for closed session.
Okay, before going into closed session, colleagues, two quick things. One is an announcement that this Friday, since we're talking about attendance, we're going to be tight on a quorum. So all members present at this time, please know that this Friday, Mr. Garcetti, Ms. Miskowski, Mr. Zion, Mr. Weiss, everybody, this Friday, our quorum is very tight. So it's imperative that all members arrive on time. There's members excused to be out. Ms. Hahn is doing us all a great big favor by coming in from a previous commitment to attend council this Friday on my pledge to her to get her out on time for a noon event on Friday. So that hour between 10 and 11 is going to be very precious. I ask for your focus, right. So I would only expect us to be in session for about an hour, hour and 15 minutes on Friday. So in order to do that, Mr. Zine, Mr. Zine, hey, in order for me to get you to your meeting on time on Friday, you got to get here on time. Everybody's got to get here on time and be focused between 10 and 11. So what does that mean? Punctuality, focus, presentations if you have any. If you have one you can reschedule. If not, then presentations may be at the end of the meeting in case a quorum is lost at that time. 10 and 11, can't emphasize that enough. And also, before going into closed session, we did receive one public comment card that came in after the meeting began. We can afford Ms. Maggie Levin an opportunity at this time to address the council.
Spoke with her and was able to resolve the issue.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. That's governmental efficiency right there. Public comment period for today is once again closed. Anything else, Madam Clerk, before going into closed session?
No, the desk is clear for closed session.
Okay, then in conformance with California law, the council will now adjourn into closed session. Sergeants, please clear the chambers. Welcome back into open session. Madam Clerk, next item before us, please.
Settlement, it's item number 63, and that's in the case of Vicencio Aguirre versus City of Los Angeles, and that's in the amount of $150,000.
Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Forthwith, please. Next item.
And that clears the desk, Mr. President.
Thank you, colleagues. That's the end of our agenda. Do we have any announcements today? Let me lead off the announcements by just thanking all of you who were able to make our visit to Sacramento yesterday. 12 out of 15 council members stormed the Capitol. It was a full court press, and I think we covered a lot of ground. Visited with many, many legislators in regards to the city budget, the state budget proposals, and its impact on the people of Los Angeles. I think it was both a productive day, but also just one day in our ongoing effort to advocate for the city. So thank you for making the time and for your work yesterday. Other announcements? Other announcements, colleagues? If there are no announcements, let's rise for adjourning motions. Could I ask for order for adjourning motions, please? Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much. With great sadness, I announce the passing of William Chavez, who had a passion for government. He was a staff member in the state legislature, and he started many, many years ago as an intern, and he died at the age of 49. He was a staff member in many capacities, but his specialty and his experience was well appreciated by the legislature, and I hope would be appreciated by the state of California, because he was one of the few experts who rose to the abilities that he did when it came to education, curricula, and funding throughout the state of California. He worked diligently to make sure that we are true to our constitutional requirement to make sure that all children are treated equally and that we have equal education disbursement when it comes to funding and programs throughout the state of California. He's going to be sorely missed by his family. He left behind 2 children and a wife, and also he'll be sorely missed by those of us who care deeply about the children of California.
Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I would like to adjourn our meeting in the memory of Marion Morgan. She was born on October 31st, 1912 in Rhode Island. and she passed away this last December in San Pedro of complications, unfortunately, from an auto accident in November. In the prime of life may not apply to most 91-year-olds, but at the time of her death, Marion was as involved as ever in her remarkable range of religious, political, community, and charitable activities. It was in the 1960s that her attention turned to social activism, women's equality, racial equality, economic justice, health care for all, freedom from hunger, freedom from imperialism. She was very active in the League of Women Voters, and she actually marched with Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers. She managed one electoral campaign and took part in many others, and she was a lifelong supporter of the United Nations, and until her passing, she was the volunteer coordinator of the United Nations shop in San Pedro. Her community work was strongly rooted in her Christian faith, and she served as the president of the Greater Peninsula and San Pedro Council of Churches and received numerous awards for her service to the community. She is survived by her husband of 58 years, Harry Morgan, her sons Michael and Robert, her daughter-in-law Jennifer Wald Morgan and Eve Ferrara, and her beloved granddaughters Annika and Julia Morgan. Her legacy of devotion to Christianity and social justice will live on in all who knew and worked with her. They're going to have a memorial service January 31st at 11 a.m. in the First Congregational Church in Long Beach. And I have another one that I would like us to adjourn for. Darlene Spickard, who passed away the morning of January 23rd at Arcadia Methodist Hospital. She passed comfortably with family members at her side. She was born in Pasadena in 1936. She leaves many bereaved family members and friends, her beloved husband of 49 years, Paul Spickard, and their 8 children, Paula, Allison, Philip, Valerie, Christy, Jessica, Pamela, and John Paul. 13 grandchildren, 1 great-grandson, and her brother, Walt Emerson Jr. of Pasadena. She leaves many nephews and nieces on both sides. Her life was children, not only in her own large family, but the many students she came in contact with during 25 years as a classified teacher's aide in Duarte Unified School District and Maxwell Elementary and Royal Oaks Elementary School. She was considered the ultimate team mother. She will be greatly missed, and the memorial service for her is planned also on Saturday, January 31st, 11 a.m. at the Immaculate Conception Church in Monrovia, followed by a celebration of life at 1 p.m. at the Knights of Columbus Hall. Thank you.
Other tributes? Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask that we adjourn in memory and honor of NFL Hall of Famer, former Wisconsin University football hero Elroy Crazy Lake Hirsch, who passed away at the age of 80 on Wednesday, January 21st. He played at Wisconsin in 1942, but later returned to the school as the director of athletics from 1969 to 1987. His jersey number 40 was one of only 4 numbers retired by the university. He was inducted to the NFL Hall of Fame in 1968, played professional football for Chicago Rockets from 46 to 48, and the Los Angeles Rams from 49 to 57. Where he accumulated 387 receptions and over 7,000 yards and 60 touchdowns. His final game in 1957, I was a high school freshman, I think, and attended it, and he was so loved by the audience that never forget that they took every piece of equipment off of him before he left the field. It's an amazing sight. His honor, his funeral services are pending.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask the council to adjourn in the name of Captain Raymond Peterman, the Los Angeles City Fire Department. Captain Raymond Peterman died at the age of 63 on January 17th. Last July, Captain Peterman suffered a serious heart attack and has spent the last 6 months of his life in the Northridge Medical Center. It's interesting, he died at 63, and yet he served 42 years with the LA City Fire Department, virtually his entire adult life. He headed Fire Station 28 in Porter Ranch when it was opened in 2002, But more important, Captain Peterman was a recipient of the Medal of Valor from the Los Angeles City Fire Department for his heroics in the 1994 earthquake at the Northridge Meadows, which collapsed. Memorial services will be held for Captain Peterman on Friday at 10 a.m. at Shepherd of the Hills Church in Porter Ranch. Donations may be made to the Los Angeles City Fire Relief Association, Widows, Orphans, and Disabled Firemen's Fund in his name at 2900 West Temple Street in Los Angeles, 90026. He's survived by his wife Marlene, sons Douglas, also a City of LA firefighter, and sister Jan Brooks. All of us in the Porter Ranch area knew Captain Peterman very well. He was very well liked at the station, and he will certainly be missed by the Northridge community. All members, I would hope.
All members.
Also, secondly, I'd like to counsel adjourn in the name of Claire Barker. Claire Barker died at the age of 54 after a 3-year battle with liver cancer. Claire arrived in North Hollywood at a very young age and graduated from Poly High School. And in 1985, her husband, Ed Buck Barker, took over the Munch Box in Chatsworth, which is a very famous landmark in Chatsworth, and where many of us used to go for our famous hickory chili cheeseburgers. And Nate Holden and I used to go out there, and it's now a historical monument. She'll be missed in the community. She's very active in the Historical Society as well as the Coordinating Council. She's survived by her husband Buck and her sons Jason and Andy, daughter Julie, and 2 brothers and 2 grandchildren.
Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request for adjourned in memory of Darylyn Emerson Spickard, passed away January 23rd. Darylyn passed away the morning of January 23rd at Arcadia Methodist Hospital of complications from respiratory disease. She was born in Pasadena in 1936, was preceded by her parents Walter Sr. and Alice Emerson. Darylyn's passion in life for children, not only her own large family, but the many students she came in contact with during her 25 years as a classified teacher's aide in Duarte Unified School District at Maxwell Elementary and Royal Oaks Elementary. She often spoke with pride of her own children's accomplishments as well as those of former students. She also served as a willful volunteer and ultimate team mother for many years in various youth athletic programs in Duarte and served in several positions in Royal Oaks PTA. Darylyn is the mother of John Paul Spickard, who works with Howard Sunken from Sorrell & Associates. Darylyn will be greatly missed by her family and friends. She is survived by her husband of 49 years, Paul Spickard, and their 8 children, Paula Luttrell, Allison Baca, Philip Spickard, Valerie Hahn, Christy Tanner, Jessica Gatlin, Pamela Spickard, and John Paul Spickard. May Darylyn Emerson Spickard rest in peace. Also, an adjourning motion for Vincent Charles Lima Jr. passed away January 21st. Vincent Charles Lima Jr. was born in Van Nuys, California on March 1st, 1952, grew up in Chatsworth and attended Chatsworth High, where he participated in Police Explorers. After graduation, he enlisted in the United States Army, where he earned the coveted Green Beret. He served his country with pride and honor for 10 years. After his discharge from the military, he became a communications officer for the United States State Department and served at U.S. embassies throughout the world. Most recently, he was employed as a contractor auditor for the U.S. government. He led an exemplary life and was a role model and mentor for all of his nephews and nieces. He was loved by all and will be greatly missed. He is survived by his mother Esther, brothers Patrick, Charles, and Anthony, and sisters Mary, Esther, Patricia, and Joanne, as well as many nephews and nieces. May Vincent Charles Lima Jr. and Darylyn Emerson Spickard rest in peace.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, Mr. President, I do not have the paperwork today, but I was informed this morning for the council to all adjourn in the honor of Ruth Scheer. Ruth Scheer is the mother of Ellen Stein, Commissioner of our Public Works Department. She passed away yesterday. She's been ill for a number of years, but she suffered a severe brain aneurysm last week, has been in a coma since then, and passed away yesterday. So on behalf of Commissioner Stein, I would hope all of us join in the recognition of her mother passing, and we'll get to pass it. Thank you.
All members. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned.